Right, so Keir Starmer is hiring a new chief of staff, and it's Partygate investigator and author of the Grey Report, Sue Gray, no less. It's an interesting appointment, this. The former civil servant, the view of abject impartiality that the civil service supposedly have, and one of the most well-known of them has left government to work for Keir Starmer's Labour. First and foremost, do I think Gray ever had an agenda to find Johnson guilty during her investigation? No. We have to bear in mind she was never meant to conduct it, for one thing. Her boss, Simon Case, was meant to, but he'd been partying too. So if we're going to look at civil servants not behaving as they should, or in any way acting improperly, start with him. He was also involved in the facilitation of a loan to Johnson with the help of Tory donor Richard Sharp, who later became BBC chairman. Yeah, very impartial. Sue Gray couldn't possibly have found Johnson innocent. The weight of evidence of him abusing the lockdown rules in place at the time was overwhelming. I do not think her impartiality was compromised over this, but the optics of this move are what they are. Accusations are now being made that she's some kind of lefty stooge. She had an agenda the whole time. The impartiality of the civil service has been made a mockery of, and the usual suspects are out in force saying so. For example, the haunted pencil, Jacob Rees-Mogg, has already tweeted out, "So much for the impartiality of the civil service. The Grey Report now looks like a left-wing stitch-up against a Tory Prime Minister." It really doesn't, Jakey. For a start, Starmer isn't remotely left-wing, as you ought to damn well know. And for two, she had nothing to do with the Met Police fining Johnson for his law-breaking. But others have come out as well and implied that this is what they knew all along, that Grey has now shown her true colours, that this stinks. It was a coup against Boris. That Partygate was a manufactured plot. That the validity of her report has now been destroyed. Nadine Dorries, who hasn't bothered with her day job as an MP for 8 months now, but still collects a salary, has called this a stitch-up, never shy to come out and defend Bozo anytime he seems to need so. Also, coming out to bat for the Tories with a front-page splash asking, "Was the Partygate probe a Labour plot?" is the ever-ridiculous, always down-market Daily Fail, and they're not the only ones carrying such a narrative. Let's just hold the bus here a sec, though. Sue Gray might have accepted this role, but she cannot take it up until the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, or ACOBA, approves it, because it, as the relevant watchdog, has to vet all jobs that former ministers and civil servants take up following their departure from official roles. Gray resigned from the Cabinet Office only last Thursday. If there's any sign of shenanigans, they could recommend the appointment be blocked. But who do they make this recommendation to, I hear you cry? The Prime Minister, as it happens. Rishi Sunak can block this appointment if he wants to. And my God, you can bet some of his MPs, the Johnson loyalists especially, people he needs to keep on side, as not all are happy with his Windsor framework deal, undoing their precious Brexit, just as a for instance, will be clamouring that he does just that. The one thing that cannot and should not happen is that her report, the Grey Report into Partygate, be discredited. Functionally, it went into more detail, but didn't ultimately deviate from the investigation the police had done. So allegations of impropriety are for the birds. The danger here, though, is that her report is forming part of the investigation being conducted by the Privileges Committee into whether Boris Johnson lied to Parliament. The report's inclusion now triggering demands that her taking a job with Team Keith now constitutes a conflict of interest in that investigation, and some want it stripped out. People with a vested interest in getting Johnson off these charges. Aside from the Tories being up in arms about it, the civil service aren't particularly happy either. They are the people who do the business of government, who run the country day to day. They outlast ministers. They see them come, they see them go. They work under one party minister or another throughout their time, and they are supposed to be utterly impartial. And the reaction from Whitehall is that such a move by Sue Gray is unprecedented, since it does give a perception of undermining that view of impartiality once they basically side with a political party, even if they were rigorously impartial whilst in post. It makes defending that impartiality very difficult for those left who have to convince people, particularly when the batshit on the Tory backbenches cry foul, amplified by the dregs of our media, that impartiality still stands. Every civil servant will end up scrutinised for their actions, their investigations going forwards, to see if they've allegedly shown bias previously, or in this instance, undermining the authority of the civil service as a check on government, as well as working for them. Even if Sunak does block it or imposes sanctions conditional upon her taking the role, the optics remain awful, and the damage has been done. I wonder what Team Keith offered her, though. She's getting on for nearly 70 years of age, Sue Gray. Is retirement that unattractive? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit like and subscribe, leave a comment and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also, look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking the Linktree link in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, folks.